Huh. Huh. So, although they sometimes intersect, ethics is a matter of morality, not legality. But before I go on, how's about another quarter question? Will anyone win this quarter today? All right, here's the question. Richard Nixon's vice president before he resigned was Gerald Ford. But when Ford became president, who was his vice president? Anyone know? 5 more seconds. No one knows. I get to keep my quarter. It was Nelson Rockefeller. Okay, back to the subject matter of this course. Now, all of you will ultimately be a part of the business world. Most of you as managers. Now, as management, it is your ethical duty as well as good business to execute corporate responsibility. And one aspect of this is being environmentally responsible. But aside from corporate responsibility, we each should be individually responsible for the environment. Now, I want you to really think about what I'm going to say. Really think about it. Every one of us in this room, including me, does more harm than good to the environment. Our cars pollute the air. Our plastic garbage pollutes. If we eat beef or drink milk, we encourage the proliferation of cows who fart out methane, which enhances global warming. So, students, just by living our normal lives, all of us in this room are a burden to the planet. Now, some of you may tend to minimize what I've just said. You think of yourselves as green, but being green just means that you're less of a burden than you otherwise might be. You're still not down to zero and never will be. And in fact, it may get worse. After graduation, you'll start a career and make good money, but statistics show that wealth is positively correlated with greater pollution and will increase your carbon footprint. The greater your wealth, the more stuff you buy, the more appliances you use, the more meat you eat, the more traveling you do, etc. Now, looks like time is up. End of class. See you Tuesday. Come in. Have a seat.
Hey, Prof. Sorry, I meant Professor Goldman. I just wanted to say that, wow, you have such interesting ways of looking at things.
Well, thanks.
I mean, I never considered myself a burden on the planet, and I don't think any of the other kids did either. You showed us the light.
Sometimes you have to accuse people to get them out of their comfort zone. I'm just trying to shift perspectives.
Well, you convinced me. I guess I'd still be a bit of a burden. I can think of lots of ways I can be less of one, recycle more, ride my bike instead of drive, open windows instead of turning on the AC.
Well, as I said in class, even if you do those things, people like you are more likely to be a burden than those less fortunate.
What do you mean, people like me?
You come from a richer family than most students at this college.
How do you figure?
Well, you're an international student, aren't you? You are paying much higher tuition than most students here who are much lower on the economic totem pole. You pay 3 times what a resident of the state pays, plus travel to and from Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi.
Saudi.
Isn't Saudi's wealth predominantly dependent on oil? Oil is not the best friend of keeping the carbon footprint down.
Your quarter question today? Tough, Professor Goldman.
Well, some are easier than others. Someone knows the answers to about half of them.
No way I'll win any of your quarters. Why not ask a simple question, like something that I can answer, like, what is the capital of Saudi Arabia?
Well, maybe I'll do that. Except it'll be Kuwait or Oman or one of the other countries around there.
You're such a great professor. There's no one like you on campus.
So you came here today to tell me this?
That's the main reason.
There's another reason?
Yeah, I just wanted to know my score on the second exam.
I reviewed the exams in class 3 weeks ago. As far as I can remember, you haven't been in class since the exam.
Yes, I've got a lot of things going on.
You weren't in class most days before the exam either.
True, but as I said, I've got a lot of things going on. But as long as I do okay on the exams, it's all right. Right?
And the group paper, how's that going?
Great. We meet tomorrow, I think.
You think?
I'll check my calendar. It's on my phone. I'll check it.
No, not necessary. The exam is in my file cabinet. It'll take me a while to find it. I have an appointment shortly. I need to prepare. However, I do have the grade sheet in this folder. Remind me of your last name.
Al-Kashar, full name, excluding 2 middle names. Ali Al-Kashar.
Well, should be easy enough to find. Beginning of the alphabet. A lot of Middle Eastern students have names that begin with A.
You noticed.
Hard to miss. Yeah. Al-Kashar Ali.
Al-Kashar Ali, that's me, just like you are Goldman Joshua. I meant Professor Goldman Joshua.
Well, a little bit better than the first exam. 68 this time, up from 52.
68. Just 68. I thought I did much better.
If you make an appointment to come back to my office, we can review the exam.
I might do that.
You hardly ever come to class, so I'm surprised you did that well.
68 is below average. I want good, but I read the book. I got all the notes from all the others in class.
Like from Fatima, the pretty one you sit next to the few times you do come to class?
That's her, but you shouldn't refer to women just by their looks. It's what they call sexist. I'm sensitive to stuff like that. I mean, I'm sensitive to statements of discrimination.
I'll be more careful in the future. You're a bright young man. You should come to class more often.
I'll try my best.
Hope you're not too busy to see me.
The work of a department chair is endless. I never have time to see you. except you're always interesting, my idiosyncratic Professor Joshua Goldman.
Always Josh to you. Date go well, Department Chair Kate O'Connor.
Always Kate to you. Real nice guy. We had fun. Doubt we'll ever see each other again. Chemistry not there. So don't tell your pal I said hi. He might get the wrong idea. M&M's.
Of course.
How's Blanca?
Great. Blanca is now president of the Chicana Society in our neck of the woods. Like you, keeps busy.
So the purpose of this surprise visit is?
I need you to look at this. Final exams. Look at the answers of the 3 students on the essay questions.
Exactly the same.
Exactly. Full credit on 5 of the 6 questions. The one they all got wrong, still the same words.
Looks similar on the multiple choice too.
Except for one that Fatima got right.
How'd they do on the prior exams?
Fatima, 94 on the first, 92 on the second, 94 here. Saud, 66, 62, 90. Ali, 52, 68, and 90 here.
So we can guess who cheated off of.
Inference, not proof.
What was the average final grade?
Median 74.
They know each other, I suppose.
Fatima and Ali sat next to each other in class on the rare class you showed up. Left together at class end.
Friends.
Maybe boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe just friends, maybe relatives.
Where did Saud sit normally?
Toward the back, but on the other side of the room than the other 2.
So what's your next step?
That's why I came here. Get the advice of an experienced administrator guru.
Guru, huh? You have some decisions to make. One is what grade to give them, both on the final and the final course grade. If you want, you can fail all of them on both.
That might not be totally fair to Fatima. She's a good student, contributes a lot in class, opinions, challenging me, seems to work hard. I hardly noticed Saud, but Ali is a different story. So I have to be consistent, don't I?
Yep.
Maybe Fatima didn't even know about the cheating.
Where were they sitting during the exam?
Fatima, second row middle. I think Ali sat next to her, but not sure. Don't remember where Saud sat.
Why do you know where she sat and not the others?
She's good looking. I tend to look at good looking.
You're married.
Doesn't mean I'm blind.
Did you assign seats?
When students file in for the exam, I tell them to sit at least 1 seat apart from any other students, but sooner or later you run out of seats and some sit next to each other.
I've heard, being the astute sleuth that I am, students often use electronic devices.
Look, I have a confession to make. I'm often a lousy proctor. Instead of observing while walking up and down the aisle, I sit at the desk up front reading a book.
Big mistake.
What also may have been a mistake is that I allowed one of them, Ali, to go to the bathroom in the middle of the exam.
Did you ask for his phone?
No, I didn't expect him to use it to cheat. He didn't do all that well on prior exams. In the future, I'll be more attentive to all that, given that students cheat.
If you know students cheat, why are you such a lousy proctor?
Maybe I have a good heart and assume the best in everyone, so I temporarily doff my proctor hat.
Makes a little sense to me. So about the grading.
I could give each the lowest exam grade anyone else in the class got, something like 42.
You could.
Offhand calculation, Fatima's final grade is B, Saud C minus, Ali F.
Why would he fail?
Well, for one, he cheated on the group assignment. He was supposed to interview 4 people about mouthwash. When I checked if he actually did them, turned out he didn't.
And the evidence?
Ali listed the 4 he supposedly interviewed with phone numbers. I didn't personally make the calls to check. Every semester, I paid Jin Lee to call for me. Outside of work hours, no out-of-pocket costs to the university.
Jin Lee, My admin.
That's her. When she called, one said she was never interviewed, one said no such person there, and one was answered by the recording saying the call cannot be completed as dialed.
The fourth?
She did reach one who said he was interviewed. A friend of his, apparently. They were allowed to interview friends.
How do you know it was a friend?
A supposition by the name Faisal Azimi. Plus, when Jinli asked him how long the interview took, he said an hour and a half. Those interviews last at most 15 minutes. Ali no doubt alerted his pal to say he was interviewed, forgetting to tell him how long the interview took.
Pretty interesting.
Ali also contributed almost nothing to the group paper and presentation. He gets docked for that.
Evidence?
I asked students to email me written evaluations of other members of their team. 3 of the 5 in the group wrote that he did virtually nothing.
The other two?
One was Fatima. The other was our friend Ali himself, who virtually proclaimed himself the team leader.
Another decision that you need to make is whether to report them to student affairs.
Done that reporting before a few times. There's paperwork, meetings.
Yep.
I'm busy enough. Got a load of papers to grade, plus figuring all the grades.
Who likes paperwork? But if instructors don't report, it gives more students license to cheat.
They can be expelled, you know.
If it's their first offense, they're more likely to be censored, with the violation placed in their permanent file. Either way, censor or expelling, they can fight it, which means more paperwork and meetings for you.
So your recommendation is?
I figure it's your duty to report them.
But
what?
Okay, don't want to shirk my duty. If I did, you might report me and I'd either be censured or expelled as a professor from the university.
Very funny. Now, let's discuss the elephant in the room. Fatima Absalom, Ali Al-Kashar, Saud Aziz, all Middle Eastern students. Troublesome. You've heard of the Middle Eastern Mafia.
You've heard the rumors too, obviously. Middle Eastern students helping each other, which may include collaborative cheating.
So far, no one has any proof or proof they're willing to provide. Think those rumors are true?
Based on my experience, there is evidence beyond the current situation. Here, look at this. My grading roster from a couple of summers ago. For some reason, I can't figure out that semester I had 10 Middle Eastern students. 10. Usually it's 4 or 5 at most.
And you conclude that from their names?
Exactly. Most names start with A. Abadi, Amin, etc. But it's the first name in combination that screams they're Middle Eastern. Mohammed, Saud, Tehran, Sultan.
A loud scream.
Look at the highlighted columns. The blue is the midterm. I only give 2 exams in the summer. The yellow is the final exam. 7 of those 10 students showed marked increases from midterm to final. Look, 45 to 85, 56 to 90, 80 to 98, 67 to 91. 2 others had midterms in the 90s, so no large increase was possible. The other fellow stayed the same, 70 to 71. Poor guy.
How do you know they just didn't study harder?
Many of them didn't attend class regularly. Or if I called on one with a question, with the exceptions of the 2 who got 90s, they had no idea of the answer.
So how did they cheat?
My best guess is they got a hold of the exam beforehand. How the exam got out, I don't know.
Hacked by the Middle Eastern Mafia.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe sometime during a prior exam, some student took a photo.
I take it you never reported them.
What could I do? I had no real proof that any particular student did anything wrong. Now I rotate my exams in different semesters, but sooner or later I duplicate.
Any other cheating experience by Middle East students?
Well, just once. After one exam, the best student in the class confidentially told me the guy in the back row next to her constantly referred to his cell phone during the exam. His exam score, 85. On the next exam, I set him up front right near me. His score, 52. His name, Yusuf Al-Kahari.
So next step this time,
In the future, watch all students carefully.
what about reporting the event to student affairs?
Your final advice?
It's up to you. But as you know, student affairs suite is down the hall. Just ask for the reporting form. Her admin's name is Robert.
You don't like me very much, do you?
I don't let lazy students get by who try to get away with not working hard. I'm known for that. I don't give sympathetic high grades, and I don't apologize for it.
Why did you give me an F? And why am I being investigated by student affairs?
I think you know why.
I'd like to hear it from your mouth.
This is no way that you respect a
Say nothing about respect. You deserve none. I have a meeting scheduled with them in half an hour, and I want to know how you could possibly have accused me of such a thing.
It is my duty to report student cheating.
If I fail this course, I can't take the other courses. I need to graduate this fall. It's a prerequisite.
Maybe you should have thought more clearly before you did what you're accused of.
Don't you know what my family is going to think when I tell them that I'm not going to be graduating in time?
And when you tell them the reason why?
The reason why, because a lousy, biased professor who thinks he's so superior reported me to something that I didn't do. I didn't do what you said that I did.
Isn't it unusual that you use the exact same words as the others on the exam?
The answers were the same because we studied together in the same group.
Was anyone else in your study group besides Fatima and Saud?
Sultan.
Sultan did not use anywhere near the same wording as you and the other two others. I checked his answers. And while grading, I didn't notice any other instances where pairs or trios of students use the exact same language.
Maybe Sultan didn't study as hard as us. How well did he do on the exam?
I'm not allowed to discuss or disclose the grades of other students.
I bet he did poorly.
He did not. I can't say anything more. If he's in your study group, ask him how he did.
I will. So, you checked all your students' exams for duplications?
I don't have time to check all exams, but I would have recognized duplication if it occurred.
So you checked Sultan's?
I just told you I did.
Yeah, what about Abdul Masood?
Checked him too, no problems.
Interesting. Okay. So you seem to have checked out all 5 of the Middle Eastern students in class. You checked anyone else from the other parts of the world? Or are people just lucky enough to be born here?
Really none of your business. It has nothing to do with what you did.
None of my business. Wow. And how about other ways that you accuse me of cheating?
Mr. Alkashar, initially I was reluctant to report you to student affairs, but by you invading here with your attitude, you've gotten me angry. A rare occurrence. And now I am so glad I reported you. So I don't think either of us is capable just now of calmly continuing with this discussion. There's nothing I can do or say to satisfy you, and nothing you can do or say to reverse my position. Now, why don't you head out to your meeting with student affairs?
You're right. Nothing good will come out of me staying here any longer. But you're going to regret what you've done. As they say, mark my words. You will regret what you have done. Have you been waiting here long?
A few minutes. The internship interview ended a lot sooner than I thought.
Okay, anybody in this office yet?
Looks like not.
Well, thanks for being here.
I'm here reluctantly.
You know it's the right thing to do.
I might not be, well, it might not be the smart thing to do, but it might not even be the right thing to do either. So
But the report was final. They said none of us was guilty of anything.
they said there wasn't sufficient evidence. That's not quite the same.
So why are you here if you feel that way?
Because we're a couple and I want to support you, even if I think you're wrong.
Well, a good girlfriend who supports her industrious boyfriend, is that so wrong?
Okay, you're not so industrious. You were too lazy to do those interviews. And
I wasn't too lazy.
then why didn't you do them?
The assignment was bloody ridiculous.
But it was the assignment and it's not for you to judge.
But you ever wonder why he chose my interviews to check? 5 people in our group, he picked me.
He said it was random.
You believe that?
Whether I believe it, it isn't important. You're just lucky student affairs believed your friend. And if you contributed more to the report, well, I might have gotten an A rather than an A
I
minus.
brought your grade down a little, but I bring you up in other ways, don't I?
Yes. Yes, you're that naughty bad boy with charm and charisma. The lead singer to a band.
I see you've developed American sensibilities in judging people.
Well, there are people like you back home. I'm not so impressed.
Speaking of back home,
Mhm.
do you know how shamed I and my family would be if his charges stood? My parents are proud I soon would have a college degree. And how about what your family would think of you? He deserves to feel the same way he made us feel.
So you're doing this out of revenge. Don't you realize that if you make this complaint, they may re-investigate and find out you and maybe the rest of us did cheat on the exam.
I told you I did not cheat on the exam. I studied hard. We all studied together. We
Mhm.
knew the exams would cover definitions. Didn't I make half of the index cards we used to study?
You made a few of the cards.
Okay, but when we used them to test each other, I knew the answers as well as you did.
Not quite.
I knew them for the exam.
They knew you had your phone when you went to the bathroom.
And I didn't use it to look up stuff and cheat.
They don't know that for sure. But having your phone looks bad. If you knew you weren't going to cheat, why didn't you volunteer to leave it with Goldman?
Who thought I'd be charged with cheating? All this time I thought you'd believe me.
I know you.
But don't you believe me?
I know you. Let's just leave it at that, okay? I'm here with you now, aren't I?
Maybe you're with me right now because once I'm done here, we're going to meet with the other from our Middle Eastern mafia to help decide which classes to drop next semester.
You know, I don't like when people refer to us as the Middle Eastern Mafia. It sounds evil when, we're just a group of students trying to help each other.
Do you think I want to stay in this country when I graduate? Do you get that feeling that most people who run this place don't like us much? They just want us around because we pay a higher tuition?
Not everyone is against us. I do have other friends, not just from the Middle East.
I don't. Well, not many anyway. So many others just tolerate us and some discriminate.
Ali, let me say it again. You put us all in jeopardy by instituting this discrimination case.
It's my duty to report him. If I don't, then this can give us a signal to him that other instructors, that he can give them a green light to discriminate against Middle Eastern students.
But in my experience, very few instructors discriminate at all.
Look, We all know Jews discriminate against Arabs. Arabs are responsible for global warming. Arabs are wealthy, and because of this wealth, we destroy the planet. My family is not wealthy, and it wasn't easy for my father to find enough money to send me to school here. If I had been found guilty of cheating, my family couldn't afford another term here. They might not even want to. What would I do then?
Well, my family is wealthy, and I have never ever ran and across any other instructors who discriminated against us, Jew or non-Jew.
But when the student affairs interviewed you, you told them that you did feel Goldman discriminated.
Yes, because I only told them that at your suggestion because I didn't want us to be found guilty of cheating. But when they asked me for an example, I could not remember any specific time.
Excuse me, are you from this office?
You mean, do I work here? The answer is yes.
Then maybe you can help me. I wish to file a discrimination complaint.
Sure.
Ah, I don't believe it. What? 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 Calm, calm, calm. Calm. Be calm.
Morning, Josh. How was your vacation?
Long hikes with Blanca and the kids, crisp mountain air made me calm.
Now, newly refreshed, you're eagerly looking forward to the new semester, huh? I'm not. Do you know how much my work exponentially piles up just before and after a new semester starts?
I love being a teacher and would get no enjoyment administering.
Complain. That's me, but I wouldn't be an icon administrator if I didn't grumble. What's up besides you coming in here to grab my M&Ms?
I'm not in the mood for M&Ms today. My mind is disturbed.
You having a disturbed mind is what makes you a wonderful instructor.
No, I'm in no mood for jokes, Kate. Just picked up my mail. Student Affairs cleared Middle Eastern students Ali, Fatima, and Saud on the exam cheating and Ali on the fabricating interviews.
They give reasons?
On the exam cheating, Student Affairs says the students all agreed they studied together, therefore had identical answers. They were aware of the buts, but determined there was inconclusive proof the group cheated.
And Ali fabricating?
With all the scamming nowadays, Student Affairs could understand why someone might deny being interviewed. And sometimes students give out fake numbers. And as far as the remaining respondents saying the interview taking so long, his pre-warned pal said he was interviewed.
Too bad you can't appeal. Students can if the decision doesn't go their way, but faculty can't.
In the future, if a similar situation arises, I will think twice about reporting, especially since
What?
I also received this little notice. It's from a different office of the university, the Office of Equity and Discrimination. Ali Alkashar has filed a complaint of discrimination against me and asks that I be fired.
Oh, what? I don't believe it.
It says, among other things, The GTU EO 198, Article 5, Section D, subsection 1.1 defines discrimination as harmful action taken against another by the university, a university employee, or another student due to a protected status. Nationality is a protected status, even though there is no country called Middle Easternia.
Careful with your facetious comments. They somehow might be used against you.
For something like Middle Easternia?
Investigative offices can have an agenda, even if it's just amass evidence that proves they're doing their job. Heed my words. Someone once called me an administrative guru.
I plan to make an appointment to meet with them. It's a totally ridiculous charge.
How specifically did he charge that you discriminated?
I told you some of it. Unfairly accusing Akshaya of exam cheating and interview fabrication, docking him for hardly participating on the team project, blaming Middle Easterners for polluting the world, and asking class questions he couldn't answer because he wasn't American.
You had reasonable explanations, no?
More than reasonable. Can they really fire me if they find me guilty?
Doesn't mean they will, but can, especially if this is repeat behavior on your part.
Well, you should know about repeats on my part. You're department chair.
I've just been department chair for a few years. Don't know about what happened before that. Did anything like this happen before?
Of course not.
In the past, how many times did you report someone to student affairs for cheating?
Over the years, 3 I can recall. Once I let a student go to the bathroom during a test, didn't take his cell. Another instructor happened to be in the bathroom and knew I was giving an exam at that time and caught him asking the answers to my exam questions. In another case, a student who came to me ostensibly to ask a question said the girl near her was referring to notes placed on the floor. I checked. She was. The woman reporting the cheating was willing to testify.
What happened to them?
First time offense for both. They didn't contest. Both censured.
From the last?
A couple of years ago, I had a kid named Danny in my class, obviously on drugs. Fell asleep half the time. Like everyone, he was supposed to interview 4 people about his group's product. When Jin Lee checked, none of the phone numbers worked out. When I reported Danny to student affairs, they exonerated him of cheating.
They give a reason?
They said the people being interviewed could probably tell Danny was on drugs. So when he asked for their phone number, they faked an incorrect one because they thought they might be recontacted by a drug addict.
Why would they agree to be interviewed in the first place if he was so apparently drugged up?
Beats me.
I take it he wasn't Middle Eastern.
He was Jewish. Danny Steinberg. I told him I'd change the F grade to incomplete and give him a chance to retake exams the next semester. If he did well enough, I'd change the grade to C. The next semester, he was clean, passed all of the exams with over 90. I guess you don't remember approving a change of grade from incomplete to C?
I get at least 20 such forms to sign every semester. Professor sends me a form to sign, I sign, rubber stamp. Think the break you gave him had anything to do with his being Jewish?
I didn't think so then. Upon reflection, I don't think so now.
It might have.
Sure, maybe subconsciously. I didn't say to myself aloud, hey, he's Jewish. You have to help a landsman.
Maybe you not giving Ali and the others a break was related to them not being Jewish.
Hey, I thought you were on my side.
I am, both personally and professionally, but I had to bring it up.
Hey, you know what? I just remembered those other 2 I reported to student affairs were Jewish. One from Israel, the other someone who said she was observant in a paper she submitted. I don't turn students in based on their religion.
You might think twice about that before mentioning Jewish in your defense. You'd be bringing up making decisions based on someone's religion.
But in both cases, I decided to report them.
So far, has religion come up anywhere in this case?
Not on my end. In his mind, maybe.
Then don't bring it up. You're not supposed to make any decisions based on religion, nationality, ethnicity, etc.
I'd like to think I did the right thing this time. For God's sake, you encouraged me to report these Middle Easterners. Besides, there's a difference between sympathetically giving certain students a break, like I gave Danny, and meeting an obligation to the university, like I did here.
If I were you, I wouldn't tell the Office of Equity and Discrimination that students you reported in the past were Jewish, especially Danny Steinberg.
Good afternoon,
Josh Goldman.
April Walters. Pleasure to meet you, Professor Goldman.
Oh, Josh is fine.
If you don't mind, I'll stick with Professor Goldman.
Oh, what should I call you then?
What about Walters? That's what they seem to call me around here.
How about Ms. Walters? I don't work around this office. Here.
That's fine. Professor Goldman, can I get you anything? Water, coffee?
No, I'm good. Got any M&Ms? Guess not.
Correct. Not. No union rep, huh? Most instructors that come to this office bring a union rep.
One, I didn't have the time to contact one for this hastily scheduled meeting.
You were the one who wanted what so quickly. And two?
Two, I don't figure I need one. I'm completely innocent. Shouldn't take much for you to conclude I am.
You resent being here, don't you?
I resent having to be here.
But if you weren't here, we would never get your side. Let's start with the purpose of this meeting.
The purpose is to go over what I'm accused of and to review the investigation process.
And to answer any questions you might have. I'll start by stating that as the investigator, I am neither on your side nor on the side of Mr. Alcashar.
Of course.
My job is to obtain all the facts through witness testimony and other means. I've already interviewed Mr. Alcashar. I wanted to start with him to get clear on the accusations. You were on vacation and I didn't want to delay the process. You'll have the opportunity to provide your defense.
My defense?
Mhm.
Why do I need a defense? Saying I'm on the defense puts me at a disadvantage. You have the lying, cheating Alcashar making specious claims against me. I've been teaching here for 15 years and I've never discriminated against anyone. I teach a class in cultural diversity here. And as far as you're concerned, we have equal standing?
Exactly, Professor Goldman. Equal standing. My position here calls for me to treat you equally in accumulating evidence and making conclusions and recommendations.
But don't you realize his accusations are bullshit? That they are...
Bullshit? It's okay. I haven't lived a sheltered life even within this protective academic community. And I think it's bullshit that you don't think I would be fair.
Then don't you realize that this is a bullshit accusation made because he's trying to get back at me for accusing him of cheating and lowering his grade, and maybe because I'm Jewish.
Be careful, Professor Goldman. I understand your frustration, but I'm not sure you want to go down that path. And on a one-time basis, I won't record what you said.
That I'm Jewish?
Accusing a Middle Eastern student in this particular situation may suggest bias on your part. Mr. Alcashar claims he's accusing you so the university can divest itself of a discriminatory professor. He mentioned nothing about you being Jewish.
Of course not. Then he'd leave himself open to a discrimination charge.
I've already begun interviewing Mr. Alcashar's witnesses.
Don't you think you should have spoken with me before interviewing any witnesses? So I could provide you with my side so you wouldn't go into those interviews with a biased take?
As I said, you were unavailable.
While on vacation, I make it a practice to not check work email, phone calls. Vacation is time to clear one's mind, to re-energize, calms me, helps to approach the new semester fresh and raring to go. Now, because of this this damn investigation hanging over my
Calm
head.
down, Professor Goldman. I appreciate that no one likes going through this process, but the university takes charges of discrimination very seriously. And again, I'll remind you that I'm not on anyone's side. I'm neutral. If you did nothing wrong, then you have nothing to worry about.
Untrue. I have to worry about spending my time preparing my defense. I have to worry that witnesses won't be truthful or not forthcoming or may misrepresent, maybe even unknowingly, what happened or didn't happen. Or even that you may misinterpret, or I'm sure unknowingly, what witnesses report. You will search for whatever bit of evidence you can find that I am guilty of discrimination. Even use against me innocuous comments I might have made.
Have you made any innocuous comments today that I should be aware of?
That's not funny.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by that.
Thanks for making a travesty of this situation, for being unprofessional.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Now I can report, if necessary, that you started to crack innocuous jokes in the middle of a serious discussion about discrimination.
That's not what happened.
No?
Mm-mm.
Can't you see how an innocuous comment you made can be so easily misinterpreted?
Duly noted, and I'll do my best to ensure that nothing like that affects your case. I have to be honest with you, Professor Goldman. Your combative attitude won't serve you well on this investigation. So, to continue to inform you of the process,
The letter you sent already describes the process. You obtain relevant information, then prepare a summary of evidence.
and we give each party the opportunity to respond to the summary.
Opportunity. Of course you do that, since this is an equal opportunity office.
Yes, it is. Then after you have the opportunity to see the evidence, you have another opportunity to react to the material in the report.
After that, you prepare a draft of a final report, which I will have the opportunity to review.
Incorrect. Not that last part. There is no draft of a final report. The report you get is final.
And I can't do anything about it?
There is an appeals process involving an arbitrator, but that may not be necessary. You may be completely exonerated.
Why do I get the feeling I won't be?
Now let's get down to business.
The brass tacks,
The basic and important details.
the essence, the most essential points.
I'm glad we've reached some common ground here.
Common ground.
Huh?
But why do I feel like I'm walking up a hill? If you don't already know this, Ms. Walters, the student who complained about me is someone who tries to get away with doing the least work as possible. I dislike students who won't work hard. Both my parents passed away by the time I was 17. I was the oldest of 4 children and had to take care of my siblings. Worked days, took classes at night, including summers. Took me 8 years to graduate college, which I did summa cum laude. Grad school took another 5 years, though my siblings were on their own by then. I worked hard and expect my students to work hard too.
I appreciate the hard work you put in. I really do. But that's not why we're here today. So, Professor Goldman, Mr. Alkashar accuses you of discrimination against him because he is Middle Eastern. As examples, he alleges that you incorrectly assumed that he plagiarized another student's.
There's your coffee. I'll pass on liquids for now. I have been living off of coffee, so I am a bit bloated.
Oh, busy time, huh?
Start of semester is the worst. I don't pull all-nighters, but only because I fall asleep at 1 a.m.
Well, you got me beat. I clock out by 10. My fellow investigative colleague unkindly left for maternity leave, and I am expected to pick up her slack.
Oh,
So, for both of our sakes, I'll keep this short.
Good idea. Care for some M&Ms?
No, thank you. So let's get started. How long have you known Professor Goldman?
Since he started here, 12, 15 years ago. I have been here for 20, a warrior of many wars, department chair for 4.
And how well do you know him?
Full disclosure, we're friends. Sometimes he even tries to set me up with blind dates, but I have the responsibility to answer your questions truthfully.
What do you know about him?
He's one of our most creative professors, an inventive maverick.
What do students think of him?
Our better students love him, but he's tough. So lesser students, not so much. As far as I know, he's professional and idiosyncratic professorial. At times what he says in class bothers some. But presenting new perspectives is part of what we do here, isn't it?
Always professional within bounds?
I don't know everything he says or does, so I can't say always.
Prior to this case, has he shown bias to any other group?
Yep. He really has bad things to say about lazy students. He really dislikes those who don't study.
And do these lazy students fall into any particular group?
Nope. Occasionally, he does make positive statements about one particular group.
Explain, please.
Sometimes he comments when he sees a very attractive woman.
What kind of comments does he make when he sees an unattractive woman?
Never heard him make any. Why are you asking? Did anyone tell you that sometimes he might make disparaging comments about women?
Just between you and me, no one said anything. Now, as we're both busy bees, let's get down to the brass tacks. Professor Goldman said you advised him to report the cheating by the Middle Eastern group.
I did.
Was the term Middle Eastern Mafia used?
In our conversation back then? Yes, I'm certain it was.
And exactly what is the Middle Eastern Mafia?
Middle Eastern students getting together to help each other.
Including help each other cheat on exams?
It would include that, yes.
When he described the cheating to you, did he mention that the alleged cheaters were all Middle Eastern?
It came up.
And did he mention at all that Middle Eastern students cheat?
He mentioned that students cheat.
Including Middle Eastern students.
I'm sure he wouldn't exclude them. We all know students cheat. Unfortunately, we usually don't catch them, at least with firm enough evidence. Professor Goldman thought he did. So did I.
In deciding to report them, did he have any other reasons beyond the similar responses?
He said he had strong feelings that some Middle Eastern students cheat.
Can you tell me about these feelings?
You'll have to ask him.
In my meeting with him, he didn't mention any such feelings.
Why would he? You might see it as self-incriminating.
Yes, I might.
Afraid I can't tell you anything more about it. Next question, please. O'Connor. Sure. I'll be right there. If you'll apologize for me. Damn, I thought that the meeting was in an hour. If you'll excuse me, I've got to go. If you have any more questions, we can meet again. I'll come to you next time.
Nope, that's okay. I've got everything I need.
I'm supporting you. Look, I'm just the union rep. My job is to advise you, even if you don't like what you hear. You can do whatever you like. It's your reputation, your livelihood, not mine.
And so I feel free to not heed what the great Omar Bashar says.
You know, my boss said at first you weren't interested in having a union rep. What changed your mind?
This 12-page summary of evidence document filled with distortions and misinformation.
So I choose me. You had a choice of union reps. Anything to do with my Egyptian heritage? The equivalent of if you're accused of a violation against a woman, hire a female attorney?
Oh, I didn't pick you because of the Egyptian thing, but on the advice of Kate, who knew something about you from prior discrimination cases.
You made a good choice. Look, there's still a lot to go over here.
Response to their summary of evidence. Makes me feel like I'm on trial with that investigator juiced up to convict me.
It's not a trial. You can't be convicted. They just make conclusions and recommendations.
And like recommend to the university muckamucks that I be terminated for cause. If it was a trial, I'd be able to cross-examine their witnesses.
But it isn't a trial, Josh, and the weak evidence against you and what you've written in response are more than sufficient to get you off. Look, let's put aside that color-coded piece of evidence you're so eager to include against my sage advice.
Table it?
Yes, put it down on the table. Introduce it, and they'll treat it like prima facie evidence that you were biased and discriminated. Your response thus far is strong, though often quite wordy, but I have no desire whatsoever to edit for brevity.
Well, thanks for your brutal honesty. I prefer total flattery.
You need praise, don't you? Like how smart you are.
I don't need it, just like it, especially considering my foul mood.
The part where you have personal friends who are Middle Eastern, you still can be biased and discriminate against the group as a whole while making exceptions for friends.
What about my first wife being black and my current wife, Chicana?
Same thing. And the same way you describe what a wonderful fellow you are because you've mentored and kept in contact with African Americans, Latinos, and various Asian groups.
All that stuff shows that I'm not a bigot.
You're accused of discrimination against Middle Eastern students, not against any other groups. Moving on the other hand, that you taught cultural diversity course, plus points.
Thanks.
Including the part where your first speaker was an imam.
I probably know more about Islam from that guy than any student in any of my classes, with the possible exception of Muslims.
The probable exception of Muslims.
Okay. Quarter question. Get the answer, I give you a quarter.
A whole quarter.
Which country in the world has the most Muslims?
Saudi Arabia?
Nope.
Iran?
No.
I give up, because if I don't, we'll never get through with this meeting.
Indonesia.
Indonesia? Wow. But if you think your knowledge of Islam will help absolve you of discrimination, please recognize that accusers may use that against you. Ever hear the expression, know thine enemy? They'll use your Islam knowledge to prove that the devil prowls around.
Ha! That know thine enemy expression comes from the New Testament, not the Quran. So if my accusers use it against me, I can just turn it around by pointing out that they're doing the same thing because they are using their New Testament knowledge against me.
But you are the one accused of discrimination here, not them, right?
Right. Let's do another quarter question. What's the capital of the state of Missouri?
I'm done with these quarter questions that you ask in order to show how smart you are.
Well, maybe I need reassurance these days. Maybe I need someone beyond Blanca to tell me I'm a good person.
Okay, you're a good person. Now let's get to something your draft didn't address at all. Kate O'Connor's testimony. The summary says that you brought up the term Middle Eastern Mafia and also stated that all Middle Eastern students cheat. Did you?
Oh, of course not. She brought up the term, the mafia term, one that I would never use. And neither would I state that all Middle Eastern students cheat. I teach cultural diversity, for God's sake.
Then in your draft, why didn't you respond with what she actually said?
Well, she would never have said anything like that about me, her friend, even if it was true. But I can't confirm it with her because I've been advised that that would be considered witness tampering.
Mm-hmm. So the investigator, Walters, she made it up?
Probably, though I don't think intentionally. She misheard or misread her notes or something.
Do you know if she confirmed what she wrote with Kate before issuing the summary?
Well, apparently not. Otherwise, those comments wouldn't be there.
Experience tells me that they don't have time to confirm what they dig up. But how about your response bringing up whether Walters ever asked Kate to confirm or disconfirm?
Okay.
And you previously mentioned that Walters made some errors.
Jin Lee was not my friend. She is the department admin, and I'm not in the English department.
If Walters made minor mistakes, she as well made major ones.
Brilliant. Why didn't I think of that?
Maybe because you're not as brilliant as you thought. Or as I am. Maybe you should pay me a quarter for coming up with that idea.
Oh, this whole case is goddamn dubious. If that office doesn't find discrimination, they may feel they're not doing their job. Come in.
Oh, good day. I'm visiting another prof down the hall. Just thought I'd stick my head in to say hello.
That's Alcashar, my antagonist in this very case. I really don't appreciate you sticking in your head considering your accusation.
Sometimes one has to accuse people to get them out of their comfort zone. Sorry if it annoys you. At times I try to shift perspectives to get others to change their ways.
Why don't you go on your way, Alcashar?
Certainly, Goldman. Oh, by the way, I really think that you do discriminate against Middle Easterners.
Because I'm Jewish?
I make it a practice not to make disparaging statements about protected classes.
You should not have said that.
What did I say wrong?
About you being Jewish. You can open a can of worms that you ask that question because you think Middle Easterners discriminate against Jews. That in itself can be construed as bias against Middle Easterners.
That sounds overly sophistic to me.
Oh.
So, Omar, now that you've seen him, do you think my accuser really thinks I discriminated, or did he do it out of retaliation?
Maybe a combination. It makes no difference at this point.
This is my damn life. If they convict me of discrimination, I may be done here. I dislike university bureaucracy, and many students don't think I'm good at professoring.
I hear that's because you're a tough grader.
But I like being a professor. I want to be a professor here. I'm not trained for any other profession. I have no other method of financial survival. If I had to work for a company, I'd go in at a junior level, be a nobody. A nobody. At least here, students respect me, or at least pretend to respect me.
What about being a consultant to business?
On what particular business subject? Finance? Management? Marketing? I teach a survey business course and cultural diversity, but I have no specific proficiency in any one area that a company might actually want. I've never worked in the outside business world. No experience. I'm a professor. I teach. That is who I am. A trained, gone through the wars professor.
How about teaching elsewhere?
Any good university doing due diligence would find out about my discrimination conviction. And if they weren't duly diligent, it wouldn't be the kind of place where I'd want to work anyway. We've just gone through a logical analysis in planning my defense, but I have gone through emotional hell knowing I have done nothing wrong and not knowing what might happen to me and having to prove I'm innocent given the current political climate. I am angry and I'm scared. Scared.
Well, take it easy, man. We're doing something about it by preparing a strong response.
It may not be enough. Our arguments are straight lining it. We need to throw in some curves.
Like what?
I'm thinking. At least some justice. Some justice.
Jim Lee, did those promotion recommendations go out to the dean's office? Yes, correct. Furman, Terrigan, oh, just hold off on Goldman. Yeah, thanks, Jim Lee.
Sorry I'm late. Another meeting.
Goldman should be here soon.
Oh, he can be a piece of work.
He's often brainily clever, but sometimes he's a dunce.
You don't like him?
I love him. He's my pal, but he has limitations. His arrogant brain sometimes refuses to recognize.
Too smart for his own good?
Too smart for his own good. You're obviously not talking about me. I was preparing a new lecture. I know I'm late.
An apology?
Just an explanation.
For a moment there, I thought I'd heard an admission that you were in the wrong.
Oh, I have no problem with admitting I'm wrong. The very few times it happens.
Right.
Okay, let's begin. You've both read their final report. In the past, I've asked each of you for your advice. This time, I'm not asking for your advice. I'm just going to do what I think needs to be done.
Why have this meeting?
Because I asked for it so Josh can make his decisions more clearly.
Untrue. Kate suggested it because she thinks you two can talk me out of what I intend. That's not going to happen. I'm going to appeal. Request they revise the report.
Why? The report clearly absolves you that you didn't discriminate.
That's great. But the report says I am biased. That means something to me. I'm scheduled to teach cultural diversity next semester. Can you imagine if someone points out that the cultural diversity prof was found guilty of bias against a protected class? But that's not the main reason.
Which is?
I have an image of myself as being a fair person. My kids have that image of me. I don't want that image sullied by this unwarranted stain on my reputation. Omar, you know why they placed this biased conclusion on me. You've worked these cases before. Tell Kate.
Because they want to seem fair. Give both parties in the case a victory. A bone for each, so you won't take the case further. You win at discrimination, Alcashar wins at bias.
If you appeal, they can reopen the whole case, maybe change their minds about discrimination.
Ever read The Crucible? Arthur Miller play? John Proctor must make a choice. Tell his truth, preserving his self-respect, but die, or lie and save his life.
We all know how that turned out. So you think of yourself as a modern-day John Proctor?
His legacy lives on.
Well, what does your wife say about this, Blanca?
Well, Blanca has reservations, but in the end will back me whatever I decide. I love that woman, and I don't want her to be perceived as having a biased husband.
She knows you're not biased.
Well, she knows I am biased, but not in an unwarranted way against Middle East students.
You're going to have to explain that one.
My pleasure. Bias has been around forever, even by those you might highly respect. Take the white founding fathers of our country, the ones who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which states all men are created equal. I guess they weren't thinking of the slaves many of them owned. Or let's delve deeper into the Declaration. Think of it as the fine print. Beyond the all men are created equal part, it cites various grievances against the King of England. One such grievance: he has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Merciless Indian savages.
Sounds like you memorized that.
I did. I use it when I teach my cultural diversity class. My point: those in charge of defining justice, like our founding fathers, can also be the same people denying justice.
Sometimes your thinking is outside of the box and wickedly insightful, Josh. But don't think you'll get away with rambling on about the founding fathers and all their biases. People at Equity and Discrimination will point out it's irrelevant and beyond their dignity.
Well, let's wait and see after I file my appeal.
Suggestion. Kate is right. Don't bring up the founding fathers in your appeal. Many people feel they are holy and will hold it against you if you have anything bad to say against them.
I'll try my best to hold back.
For those who haven't met me, and if you're not Bashar or Walters, you haven't, I'm Marguerite Ramirez, retired judge, graduate of this university a long time ago, before they had places like this Office of Equity and Discrimination. I'm a crotchety SOB, but fair. I'm familiar with relevant written and case law, as well as university procedures. The university pays me once in a while to arbitrate. I don't need the money, but enjoy being in a room where I am in charge.
I can second that Ms. Ramirez is fair and does not usually rule in favor of the university just so they'll continue to rehire her as an arbitrator.
If I usually rule in favor of the university, it is because their side is usually right.
Thank you very much for being here today, Judge Ramirez.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your welcoming words. Now, I am recording this meeting. For those of you unfamiliar with the setup here, there is a microphone hidden in the ceiling that I just turned on.
Shouldn't you have told us you activated it before you did?
If anyone wants to object now to recording, just say so, and I'll toss you out of the room. I'm sure each of you wants this matter resolved.
I understand, Your Honor.
No need to call me Your Honor. I'm no longer a judge, just the presiding official here. So you can address me as either Ramirez or even better, Ms. Ramirez.
Yes, Ms. Ramirez.
For the record, present here today in the Office of Equity and Discrimination are Omar Bashar. Nice to see you again, Bashar.
Nice to see you as well.
April Walters. Walters, can you explain why Douglas Horlick, head of your unit, is not here?
Yes, Doug is very busy with other issues. Our department is overloaded and very behind, and so he suggested that I represent because I'm familiar with the details of the case.
Oh, that's too bad.
What's too bad?
That he's not here, overloaded with work. Lots of discrimination going on these days, I suppose.
I hope you are truly sympathetic rather than delivering some sarcastic wisecrack.
Oh, no, I meant it. It would have been best if the head of the office could be here.
Also present, I believe I can figure out which of you is which, are Professor Joshua Goldman, Dr. Catherine O'Connor, and student Ali Alpashar. Okay, let's get to it. The reason for this appeal hearing is that in its final report, the Office of Equity and Discrimination cleared Professor Goldman of a discrimination charge, but also cited that he was biased against Middle East students. Professor Goldman is appealing the bias aspect only, because if he appealed the discrimination verdict, he'd be a damn fool who didn't belong teaching at this fine university. Am I correct so far, Professor Goldman?
You are Ms. Ramirez.
But he did discriminate.
Mr. Al-Kashar, this appeal is not about discrimination. It's about the bias charge. If you have anything to add about the bias charge, once we get further into it, you'll get your opportunity.
Thank you for allowing me this future opportunity.
So, Professor, tell me why the bias charge should be dropped.
You'll have to bear with me.
Of course, I'll bear with you. I'm a real teddy bear if you get to know me. So continue.
Ms. Ramirez, I am biased.
Really? So I surmise by this admission, you're dropping your appeal and we can all go our frolicking way.
Not quite.
Then educate us.
Well, before I get to my bias, there are different aspects of bias I'd like to address. One is that the evidence the office used to develop the bias charge is suspect. The only two people who directly accused me of bias were Mr. Al-Kashar and Fatima Absalam. Ms. Absalam and he have some sort of relationship, either friends or relatives. Mr. Al-Kashar virtually failed my course, not because of the exam cheating. I had to reinstate his exam grade, but because he fabricated interviews on his group term paper and hardly contributed to that group activity. The other 3 students in their group project did not think I was biased or discriminatory. Neither does Dr. O'Connor.
That is correct, ma'am. I have never heard a biased word from him regarding Middle East students.
But Ms. Walters' report says that you admitted he made biased comments about Middle Eastern students cheating. All Middle Eastern students cheat. You told her he said that.
The report was wrong, and I wish Ms. Walters would have checked with me before issuing that report. She obviously misunderstood what I was saying. He never said all.
What did he say?
Something like, we know students cheat, and that is true. Anyone thinking students don't cheat is naive. Not all students, but many. Student cheating is why being a conscientious proctor is important and an area Professor Goldman needs to improve.
I admit that. I need to activate my proctoring skills more often. See, I am more than willing to confess my deficiencies. Unwarranted bias is not one of them.
Ms. Walters, did you check that part of your report with Dr. O'Connor before issuing it?
It's not common practice of the department for us to check the details of our interviews. I'm pretty sure my notes are accurate.
Dr. O'Connor, was the report wrong in any other way?
The report says Professor Goldman used the term Middle East Mafia, but I was the first one who brought up the term when he first presented me with the current cheating issue. It was not the first time I used the term, nor have other instructors shrunk from using it. It is common knowledge among faculty that Middle East students sometimes collaborate. At times, it just means they give each other tips or study together. And at other times, it can mean some cheat.
Ms. Ramirez, you should accuse her as well of discriminating and being biased.
Mr. Alkashar, I sympathize that you feel you have been treated unfairly, but I would appreciate it if you would cease interrupting. I will call on you later for anything you might want to add.
Certainly, Ms. Ramirez.
In the interest of full disclosure, I also plead guilty to an aspect of what Mr. Alkashar calls bias. In just about every class session, I throw out what I call a quarter question. Whoever gets the answer first wins a quarter. I also use similar questions on exams. Students can get 1 or 2 bonus points by getting it right. So students can only increase their score by a small amount.
Throw me a question. Let's see how smart I am.
Okay. What is the capital city of Texas?
Austin. I have relatives there. Ask me about a state where I'm unlikely to have relatives.
What is the capital of Vermont?
Montpelier.
Correct. Mr. Alkashar indicated that American students have an advantage because my questions usually involve American history, geography, or culture. And he is correct. I unknowingly put international students at a disadvantage. Students from Europe, South and Central America, and Asia, but not Middle East students in particular. So such unfairness does not belong in the current report, which specifies I'm biased against Middle East students.
Nice speech, Professor Goldman, but I disapprove you're using it to keep from handing over a quarter. Actually, 2 quarters. I may be getting old, but I still have sharp short-term memory. So you're going to stop asking those types of questions in your classes?
Well, not entirely. I'll stop them on exams, but continue asking in lectures where they have no bearing on grades. My students love them.
By the way, thanks for the payoff. I trust the rest of you in this room will keep this financial transaction hush hush. Sure you can afford it, Professor Goldman?
As long as I keep my professoring job here. If I don't, who knows? I'm a trained professor, not particularly trained for anything else. Thought I'd be a lifer, but maybe not.
Anything more you have to say about bias?
Well, sure do. Equity and discrimination has charged me with bias, but the office has no definition of bias. They have a definition of discrimination, but not bias.
Is that true, Ms. Walters?
We have no official definition, but everyone knows what bias is.
Which is?
In our office, it refers to a person who treats another person or a group of people based on specific factors: ethnicity, gender, nationality, or any other protected class. And let me just say that bias can go in favor or against.
Well, if I may step in here, ma'am, what Ms. Walters cites is their definition of discrimination, not bias.
So what does bias mean to you, Professor Goldman?
Well, to me, bias is an attitude of superiority, that you are better than another person or group, or looking at it another way, that they are inferior.
Does that sound right to you, Ms. Walters?
Yes, I have no problems with that.
So to concisely summarize, discrimination is an act and bias is thought.
Now that that's clear, I again want to admit that I am biased against certain groups.
Professor Goldman, are you sure you know what room you're in?
I am Jewish, a secular Jew. And for one thing, I'm biased against some of the more religious groups of Jews, the Hasids with their restrictive rituals and strange dress. And not only am I biased about the superiority of my group of Jews over Hasids, I think overall we're better than just about all groups. We're smarter, have a better sense of humor, and have tastier food.
Better than us Middle Easterners, of course.
But we are all biased. Every one of us in this room is biased. Everyone. Think of a group you belong to. Religious, nationality, ethnicity, an important group to you, one you identify with. Omar, you are Muslim. Do you feel Islam is superior to other religions?
I'm not religious.
Oh, even so, don't you think Islam is superior to Judaism? Avoid the party line that you respect all religions. You know in your heart Islam is superior. So you are biased against other religions.
I have never done anything to discriminate against Jews or any other group.
That's not what I asked. Don't you think Islam is superior to Judaism? And aren't Egyptians with their long history of civilization superior to those other Arabs?
I get your point.
That's his union rep talking. You can't pay attention to him. They set this up beforehand.
We did not.
Sorry, Ms. Ramirez.
So, Omar, you don't deny you're biased against other religions. Islam is superior, but you also feel you don't discriminate.
Interesting approach.
What about you, Kate? What groups do you belong to that are important to you?
I'm Irish, and we're sure better than them stodgy English folk. I'm Catholic, and there's no more sacred religion. Sorry about that, Josh, Omar, Ali. So I am biased. I am biased, though, like Omar, I don't think I've ever discriminated to support my bias in my whole adult life.
See, bias occurs throughout the world. Armenians are biased toward Turks and vice versa. Koreans and Vietnamese are biased against one another. Even some Swedes against Norwegians. The Shiites and Sunnis are best buddies, aren't they? From my first marriage, I know something about blacks as well. Did you know that lots of light-skinned blacks feel they have it over those with dark skin? True, Ms. Walters?
True.
Ms. Walters, let me ask you another question. What do you think of white supremacists?
What kind of question is that?
A simple one, not tricky. Please answer. What do you think of white supremacists?
Well, I despise them, of course.
So you're biased against them?
How could I not be?
So am I. Another example of me being biased. Now, let me ask you about a more delicate issue.
Okay.
You've heard the term white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that white privilege exists, that even whites who seem to show no bias have this absence of their own race consciousness?
Of course it exists.
Now, I do not mean to imply that you have in any way discriminated against me in your report. You were objective and disregarded any notion of white privilege you assume I possess.
That had no bearing on what I wrote.
Right, so you agree that if you did have any bias, it wasn't reflected in your investigation of my case.
I would agree to that.
Thank you. See, everyone who is biased can justify that bias. An outside observer might be objective and say the bias makes sense. It's not unfair. In fact, even justified. After all, shouldn't Armenians be biased against Turks because of the genocide? And sometimes it is not justified, like white supremacists thinking they're superior to those of color.
I'll remind you, Professor Goldman, that white supremacist is a belief system, not a protected class. In addition, Professor, looks like you missed questioning someone in this room during your bias lecture.
Who?
Me. Me. You've questioned Bashar, O'Connor, and Walters, but if you didn't notice, I'm in this room too. Aren't you going to ask about what biases I have? Why discriminate against me?
I didn't think it was appropriate, but now that you mention it, what biases do you have?
You have a lot of gumption to ask that question of me, the arbitrator of your fate. I'm not going to get anywhere near that subject.
Then why did you ask me to ask you?
Wanted to see how you'd handle it. Where are you going with this? Getting everyone to admit they are biased in one way or another.
Well, sometimes the person having the bias isn't so wrong if the bias is justified. Should you chastise Armenians for bias against Turks? Should you scold Blacks for bias against white supremacists? And so I need to point out that the original complaint I was accused of was discrimination. I was not accused of bias. These are different offenses.
But in order to have discrimination, don't you need to be biased?
Well, aside from being bribed to discriminate, perhaps you do. But ma'am, two things. As I already pointed out, sometimes bias is justified. Equally as important, I was never asked to defend myself against a charge of bias. Let me repeat, in the original charge, I was not charged with bias and not asked to defend myself against bias.
Is that true, Ms. Walters?
Not specifically, but it is implied.
Oh, if I had been accused of bias, I might have presented evidence that any such bias, or at the very least suspicion, was justified.
And you have such evidence?
Well, perhaps in this appeal, it's time to roll out what some advisors convinced me to suppress earlier.
Don't need to do this, Josh. You've already made enough good points.
Here it is. It's information from a class a couple of summers ago. The chart supplies clear circumstantial evidence that some Middle East student groups cheated, and so I had grounds for suspecting cheating in my case. Would you like me to explain the chart?
Blue midterm, yellow final. I'm a quick study.
This document illustrates how Middle Eastern students cheated previously in a collaborative way, with so many of them drastically improving their final exam scores over their midterms, even while not attending class multiple times prior to the exam or not returning at the break, and being unable to answer questions I asked in class about material they should have known and would have known if they really knew the subject.
Sounds like you rehearsed that run-on sentence.
I did. I never assumed all Middle East students cheat, but collaborative cheating occurred at least once, showing that even if I was biased, any such bias or at least suspicion was justified.
And so, if you feel bias is justified, you should not be punished.
And I felt it was justified.
But it depends on who is making the decision about justification.
Very true.
Why didn't you present this earlier in this whole investigation?
Because the consensus of my advisors was that if I did, it would be used against me. Still might be. Depends on the bias of the investigator or the arbitrator.
The consensus was correct. It certainly does contain information that could be used against you regarding both discrimination and bias. Definitely could be used against you. Very damaging. Anything to add, Professor Goldman?
No. No.
Good. At one point, I thought you might drag up how our founding fathers were biased.
That didn't come to mind at all.
Mr. Alcashar, anything you have to add?
Well, the paper proves beyond any doubt that he is biased against those of us from the Middle East.
This document does supply relevant evidence. We're done here, unless someone else has something to offer. Well then, I think I have enough information to make a ruling.
Ma'am, my reputation is at stake here. I have done nothing wrong.
Uh-huh.
You should either rule that I'm innocent of bias or have them reopen the investigation. And this time have them define bias, investigate whether there was bias, and if so, was the bias unjustified? I demand either finding.
Professor Goldman, you are not in any position to demand anything.
Then I request it.
Your request will be taken under advisement.
I did nothing wrong.
Yes, yes, yes. Nothing wrong. Ugh. I'll email each of you my decision in the not too distant future.
Thank you, ma'am, for presiding over this meeting.
I came for comfort food.
Go for it.
I need comforting.
You won't get it from me for the moment. The meeting this morning stole a bunch of my time.
How long do you think it'll take Ramirez?
Could be later today. Could be a week. Who knows?
I don't know if I can handle waiting very long. Aren't you nervous?
Not as much as you.
Think I made a mistake showing her the chart?
If it was me, I wouldn't have done it.
Oh.
You already rung up a bunch of points.
What happens if the chart's so damaging that they revert to convicting me of discrimination?
Can't do that. The meeting was just about bias.
The rules can be circumvented. This is an academic institution, you know.
Know what? You're right. Ramirez could change the verdict on discrimination, and the university will have to get rid of you, which will really piss me off.
Why? Because they went back on their word? And because you'll miss me?
No, because I'll be pissed off at you for increasing my workload by having to find someone to replace you.
Ramirez did not leave that room a happy woman.
Discrimination, no. Bias, another matter. Don't worry, I won't fire you. Even if I wanted to, because you're irritating me by being here while I'm trying to get things done. I can't fire you, only because you have tenure. The report will go into your personal file, your personnel file.
And
at some point, someone may look at it.
who is the someone?
Someone is someone from the group that would decide if you're going to be promoted from associate professor to full.
Oh. Don't expect me to do my duty by ever reporting student misbehavior again.
I won't until the next time you report misconduct to me. And I advise you to do what's right. An email from Ramirez. Looks like it was sent to all the relevant parties, including you.
But I'm here now. What does it say?
It says, I should open the attachment. Here we go.
You read it aloud.
On the basis of the meeting we had earlier today regarding appeal of Professor Joshua Goldman, I am providing the following ruling. There is no change, of course, in the report regarding clearing Professor Goldman of discrimination. With respect to the issue of bias, there is sufficient reason to believe he has significant biases. Importantly, the professor has admitted that he has biases.
Oh, shit.
He also proved to my satisfaction that we all, including myself, have biases regarding protected classes, whether it involves religion, race, or nationality. As he points out, just because someone is biased does not necessarily indicate they discriminate if they do not take action regarding those biases. And even if they do take action, this does not necessarily mean that the action taken is unjustified. For example, groups are biased against others due to genocide. He also presented as evidence via an elegant blue and yellow highlighted chart that if he did have bias against or suspicion of some Middle East students cheating, it was justified. While Professor Goldman has biases, as do we all, it is clear that any discussion of such bias in the report under review would unfairly interfere with his career here and any other institution. Therefore, I rule in favor of Professor Goldman's appeal and hereby order the Office of Equity and Discrimination to strike any statements in their final report that he is biased against Middle Eastern students. Signed, Marguerite Ramirez, Judge Emeritus and Arbitrator.
Oh, that's what I thought she'd say all along.
Right. Of course. Definitely. So what are you going to do to celebrate?
To celebrate, I'm going to watch you tell Jin Lee to forward your nomination of me to full professor.
Have you no humility?
I do. Dr. O'Connor, can I humbly entreat you to send in my nomination to full professor?
No need to call me Dr. O'Connor. Kate will do.